On my wedding day, I exposed my fiancé and sister's affair in front of everyone. The morning light pours through the white curtains like melted gold. My reflection in the mirror looks angelic, almost soft curls pinned just right, skin glowing under the moisturizer lips, untouched by lipstick yet. It should be the happiest morning of my life. I should be glowing for real, but something is wrong. It hums beneath my skin like an alarm I can't hear but feel. Something is off. My name is Rachel Parker, I'm 28, and I live in Savannah, Georgia, born and raised. And today was supposed to be my wedding day. My gown hangs on the back of the closet door, a pearly vision of satin and lace, the result of 6 months of fittings and daydreams. My best friend Holly is already downstairs with the bridal crew sipping mimosas, doing TikToks, trying to make me laugh. But I'm not laughing, not today. There's a pressure in my chest I can't shake, like a balloon ready to burst. I keep catching my breath mid-sigh. My mind is busy replaying everything from the rehearsal dinner to the way my sister kept brushing her fingers over my fiancé's sleeve. That strange eye contact between them when they thought no one was looking. Her giggle when he whispered something that had nothing to do with her. Vanessa, my younger sister. Blonde, brilliant, and breathtaking in her own way. The girl who always knew how to make a room look at her, even if it was my room to begin with. I push the feeling down. I do what I've always done, smile, smooth it over, be the calm in the chaos. It's been that way since we were little. Vanessa crashed bikes and I patched knees. She stole my diary in middle school and read it to her friends. I forgave her. She got into trouble for sneaking out in high school. I covered for her. When she dropped out of college and moved back in with our parents, I was the one who helped find her a job. And now she's my maid of honor, because that's what sisters are supposed to be. I head to the kitchen in my robe to grab a granola bar and some water before the day really begins. That's when I notice it. Jason's phone. He left it charging on the counter. It's vibrating softly, 3 messages in a row. Something about the pattern catches my eye. I shouldn't look. I know I shouldn't, but I do. And maybe that's the moment everything changes. Because even though I don't open the phone yet, the name that lights up the screen is just a single letter. VOP! 3 short vibrations, 3 new messages from V. My hand freezes in midair, still clutching the granola bar. My heart skips, then slams twice in a row. I try to tell myself it could be anything. Vanessa's name starts with a V, sure, but so do a lot of names. Maybe it's Victor, a coworker, Valerie, a friend, but no emoji heart. Not that emoji. I press my lips into a line and carry the phone with me upstairs. I don't open it yet. I don't have the courage. Not now, not yet. Instead, I place it carefully on the nightstand. I sit down on the edge of the bed. The silence in the room is thick, pressing against my eardrums. My robe suddenly feels too tight around the neck. I loosen the belt, and I sit there staring at the phone like it's a bomb waiting to detonate. I glance at my dress again, my veil, my bouquet in the fridge downstairs, my friends, my mother, my father who took out a loan to help us pay for the venue I fell in love with. Everyone's waiting. Everyone believes today is the beginning of something beautiful, and maybe it still can be. Just not in the way they think. Because something tells me that before this day is over, I won't be the only one with my heart cracked open. If you were me standing there in the quiet before a wedding already suspecting something was wrong, would you open the phone? Would you really want to know the truth? I open it. Not because I want to, but because I have to. Because when your stomach churns like this and your fingers are trembling just from thinking about what might be there, you already know. The passcode is still the same, my birthday. He never changed it. It opens like it always has. Familiar, trusting, easy. I scroll to the top of the messages from V and begin to read. The first one is from this morning. Can't wait to see you walk down the aisle. But not for the reason you think another follows you wore that red lingerie I love last night in your room. God, I almost lost it. And the third, she has no idea. This is going to be so hard to keep a straight face today. My hands go ice cold. I read them again as if the words might change, as if my brain is wrong. But there it is. Undeniable. Vanessa isn't just involved, she's gleeful. She's flaunting it, teasing him. On my wedding day. And Jason, he isn't resisting. I scroll further and it's like watching my heart unravel thread by thread. Midnight kisses. Secret meetings when I thought he was working late. Vanessa telling him things she never even told me. My sister describing the necklace she wore at the rehearsal dinner and him replying how sexy she looked in it. Photos. Selfies of them together, his hand on her waist, her lips on his cheek, sometimes his neck, and timestamps that slice me open. One of them was sent the night we picked our wedding menu. Another was on my birthday. Another on Mother's Day when she smiled so sweetly and handed me a card signed, "Love Always Ness." I feel nauseous. I barely make it to the bathroom before I throw up. When it's over, I sit on the tile floor, clutching the phone to my chest like it's a shard of glass. I rock back and forth for a few minutes, just whispering, why, like a broken record. It's not just the betrayal, it's who it is. My fiancé, my sister, together, behind my back. For months. Every family dinner, every Sunday brunch, every time she offered to help with the wedding, every accidental touch, every secret look, every glass of wine shared between them while I wasn't looking, it all comes flooding in now, framed with new meaning. How could I not have seen it? Was I that blind, or was I just trusting? I hear laughter downstairs. Vanessa's laugh, loud and full of life. The same laugh she used when we were kids watching movies on our old VCR. The same one that used to make me laugh too. But now it's a weapon. I clench the phone tighter in my hand. A rage bubbles in me, cold, clean, precise. It's not screaming rage. It's deeper, quieter. The kind of fury that settles in your spine and says, you're not going to cry your way through this. You're going to show them who they broke. I wipe my face, wash my mouth, and I look in the mirror. This time I don't see a bride. I see a woman sharpening herself like a blade. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but I know one thing for sure. They are going to regret ever thinking I was weak enough to break quietly. Ugh! The hardest part wasn't reading the messages. It was walking downstairs and pretending I hadn't. There she was, Vanessa, in a silky blush robe, hair curled, sipping from a champagne flute, like nothing in the world could touch her. My best friend Holly was doing her lashes and laughing at some inside joke I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears. Vanessa turned to me, and for a second I thought she knew, that maybe guilt would soften her grin. Maybe she'd blush or look away. Maybe her eyes would say, "I'm sorry." But no. She smiled like a queen, all teeth, all glow, like she owned the day. "You look like a goddess already," she said, sliding over with her flute. "Are you nervous or just glowing?" I wanted to spit the truth at her right there. I wanted to slap that champagne out of her hand and scream, "How could you?" But I didn't. Instead, I gave her a half laugh and said, "Probably a mix of both." She touched my arm then. That same arm Jason had kissed just 2 nights ago after our final cake tasting. I could still feel his lips like a phantom scar. Vanessa leaned in close. "You're about to marry the man of your dreams," she whispered. "Savor it." My throat closed up. The audacity, the cruelty. I didn't reply. I just moved away and sat on the edge of the vanity while the hairstylist asked me what kind of curls I wanted. I said loose romantic, even though I felt anything but. Every time Jason texted or called that morning to say he loved me, couldn't wait to see me, I responded with hearts and emojis, because I needed him calm. I needed him to think everything was still on track. Because if I was going to pull this off, I needed them both to be fully at ease, unaware. That was the only way it would work. By mid-morning, the photographer arrived. I posed. I smiled. I hugged my mother, who kept fixing the pearls on my neckline, telling me, "You're doing everything right. You're going to have a beautiful life, baby." If only she knew. Or maybe she did. because somewhere in her eyes was that look tight-lipped and too careful. A mother who knew more than she was saying. I remembered once weeks ago catching her talking to Vanessa in hushed tones in the garage. They went silent when I walked in. She'd brushed it off with a nervous laugh. The more I thought about it, the more it all made sense. The afternoon melted forward in snapshots. My gown zipped up, my shoes buckled, my bouquet handed to me, the limo waiting outside. The moment Vanessa took my hand in hers as we sat side by side heading toward the chapel, I looked down at our linked fingers. Her nails were freshly done classic French, the same style Jason once said he loved. She noticed me staring, what she said with a playful grin. "You're not allowed to cry yet." I didn't cry. I memorized. The weight of her fingers in mine, the warmth of her palm. I wanted to remember what betrayal felt like in the most literal way possible. By the time we got to the chapel, my heart wasn't racing anymore. It was cold, focused, like something inside me had crystallized into strategy. Before walking in, I excused myself, said I needed a moment alone. I ducked into a quiet room and opened my laptop. I had already uploaded screenshots of their messages to a private folder, over 60 of them. I'd saved the most damning ones in a slideshow, added a few of their selfies for full effect, made sure the timestamps were visible. I opened the document one last time. I even added background music to play before I began reading. A slow, somber piano track. Because if I was going to burn this day down, I was going to make it cinematic. I saved everything to a USB drive, slipped it into my garter, and smiled. Let the show begin. You can tell when a storm is coming, even on a clear day. The chapel was breathtaking. Candles flickered along the aisle. Ivory rose petals were scattered with surgical perfection. Every seat was filled with familiar faces, friends from college, Jason's co-workers, extended family, some I hadn't seen in years. It smelled like vanilla, eucalyptus, and lies. Jason stood at the altar in his crisp black tux hair styled just how I liked it, a soft smile fixed on his face. He looked like every girl's dream, except I knew better now. Vanessa adjusted my veil one last time behind the chapel doors. "You ready?" she whispered. So calm, so sure, so untouchable. I looked at her, really looked, and smiled with a tenderness that masked the earthquake underneath. More ready than I've ever been. The music began. The bridal march played slowly on the piano, just as I'd chosen. My cue. I took my first step down the aisle, my father's arm around mine. I glanced toward Jason. His eyes welled. Of course they did. Why wouldn't he cry? He had no idea his perfect little game was about to collapse. Every step felt like thunder in my chest. Every smile from the crowd cut like glass. When I reached the altar, Jason took my hands. His palms were warm, steady. He looked at me like I was his whole world. I stared back like he was already buried. The officiant welcomed everyone, spoke about love and commitment, family and trust. Trust. What a joke. He asked Jason to speak his vows first. Jason cleared his throat, trembling slightly, and pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "Rachel," he began, "you are the most beautiful woman I've ever known. Not just on the outside, but in the way you love, care, protect. The way you forgive." I nearly laughed. He kept reading about the future, our home children forever. I listened quietly, smiling, blinking, looking every bit the bride in love. Then it was my turn. I didn't take out a paper. I didn't need one. I turned to the officiant and said, "Before I speak my vows, I'd like to share something first." He looked confused. Jason gave a small, nervous chuckle. Vanessa was seated in the front row, beaming with pride. My mother clasped her hands. I put together a little surprise, I said calmly. A message. For everyone here, for Jason, and for Vanessa. The pianist stopped. I walked to the front of the altar, motioned to the AV technician, and handed him the USB from my garter. "Play the video," I whispered. He nodded, inserted it into the laptop hooked to the projector. Jason's smile began to falter. Vanessa's eyebrows pinched. The lights dimmed. The projector lit up the back wall. A piano track began. The same slow melody as the bridal march, but softer now. Sadder. Then came the messages. The first few were tame hints of flirtation, smiling emojis, inside jokes. Then came the more explicit ones. Jason's voice echoed across the chapel, reading aloud what he'd written to Vanessa line by line. That dress hugged your hips perfectly. I had to look away before I got hard. She doesn't suspect anything. She still thinks I'm helping you find a new apartment. I dreamt about you again last night. You were wearing her white silk robe. A gasp rippled through the room, whispers. A few hands flew to mouths, an audible, "Oh my God." Jason lunged forward. "Rachel, what the hell is this?" I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The messages kept scrolling. Their selfies popped up one by one. Vanessa kissing his cheek. Him grabbing her waist. Her lying on a bed I recognized, our guest room. Vanessa shot up from her seat. "Turn it off? Turn it off." Jason was red-faced, stammering. "This is fake. She's crazy. This isn't real." I finally turned to face them. "It's real," I said quietly. Every word, every photo, every kiss, every lie. The pianist stood frozen. The officiant backed away. Guests were stunned, too shocked to move. I took a deep breath. "You didn't just cheat on me," I said to Jason. "You chose her, my sister. The one person I trusted to stand beside me today, not just in the ceremony, but in life." I turned to Vanessa, who looked like a statue. "And you," I said. "You didn't just sleep with my fiancé. You smiled in my face while doing it. You let me cry on your shoulder about his coldness knowing why. You toasted me at my bridal shower. You called me your best friend." I shook my head. "But I'm not crying anymore." And I wasn't. No tears, just silence. "I won't be marrying you, Jason," I said, voice steady. "You and Vanessa deserve each other, and every ounce of what's coming." Then I walked out. No music, no bouquet toss, no reception. Just the sound of my heels hitting the marble floor, and the chaos I left behind. The chapel doors slammed shut behind me, echoing like the final line of a play. For a moment, the quiet outside felt too big, too wide. The sun was still shining ironically warm, as if it hadn't just witnessed the ruin of two people's reputations in front of 100 guests. But I didn't flinch. Not even when the tears tried to climb up my throat. I walked toward the garden path behind the venue, bouquet still in hand, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. My father caught up with me seconds later. He didn't say anything at first. Then in a low voice he murmured, "You did what you had to do." I nodded. "You knew." He paused. "I suspected." I didn't want to believe it. "But when your mother kept defending Vanessa even after I mentioned the late-night calls," he didn't finish the sentence. "He didn't need to. She protected her," I said. "She chose her. She always has." That was the second heartbreak of the day. Not just losing a fiancé or a sister, but realizing my mother had known. And stayed silent. It hurt more than I expected. A few minutes later, Holly found me. She ran straight into me and threw her arms around my shoulders. "Rach." That was the most brutal, badass thing I've ever seen in my life. I didn't laugh. I just sank into her hug. Finally let my breath shake. The guests were dispersing by then. Some looked confused, others intrigued. A few avoided my gaze altogether. My uncle clapped me on the back and muttered something about family shame. One of Jason's groomsmen gave me a solemn nod of respect. I caught a bridesmaid recording herself by the fountain, already spinning the story into content. The world moves fast after a scandal. Back inside the chapel, Jason was yelling. I could hear his voice rising through the walls, panicked, defensive, humiliated. Vanessa's sobs followed next, sharper and shriller. "Good. Let them scream. Let them turn on each other like snakes who realize the nest is burning." I didn't look back. Instead, I walked straight to the bridal suite and unzipped the gown that now felt like a costume from a lie. I stood there in my slip staring at myself in the mirror. There she was, the woman who had loved, fully trusted blindly, and then cracked but didn't crumble. I texted my brother to bring the car around. I packed my overnight bag, took off the engagement ring, and laid it gently on the vanity table. Let them sell it. Let them pawn it. Let it rot in a drawer as a reminder of everything they tried to bury. By the time I stepped outside, most guests had vanished. A few lingered by the parking lot, whispering like schoolchildren. I didn't care. I nodded once at them and slid into the back seat of my brother's car. "Where to?" he asked softly. "Anywhere that isn't here," I replied. We drove, windows down, music low, and for the first time in weeks, I let the silence inside me settle. I wasn't angry anymore, just empty. But even emptiness is a beginning, because once you've burned down the life someone else built for you, you're free to start over. Free to build something they can't touch. Something real. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed them, or would you have walked down the aisle pretending everything was fine just to keep the peace? Because I chose war, and I don't regret a single second of it. That night, the silence of my apartment felt like a thunderclap. I was supposed to be on a honeymoon, supposed to be drinking champagne in a hotel suite with rose petals on the bed and the illusion of a lifetime ahead of me. Instead, I sat on my couch in sweatpants, makeup, half removed, the scent of eucalyptus still lingering in my hair like the ghost of a life that never happened. I stared at the blank TV screen, then at the wall, then at nothing. I didn't cry, not yet, not really. I just sat there, hollow, burned out, like someone had pulled my strings and left me slumped on stage. At around 10 p.m., my phone started buzzing. First Jason, then Vanessa, then my mom. I didn't answer. Then Holly texted, "You okay? They're spiraling." I responded with a single line, "Let them." It was the most peace I'd felt in days. Still, the next morning hit hard. I woke up in a tangle of sheets, the world quiet and unforgiving. The kind of morning where you have to remember all over again that everything has changed. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen counter, and reread some of their messages. Not to hurt myself, to remind myself, to remember who they really were when they thought I wasn't looking. And with every word, I felt something inside me crystallize, not into pain, but purpose. I decided that morning I wouldn't fall apart quietly. They'd taken enough of my time, my trust, my softness. I was done giving. By noon, I'd blocked Jason, Vanessa, and my mother from every platform. Email, text, phone, social media, gone. I changed my locks. I called the venue and told them to send the rest of the deposit refund to my father. I took the dress, the veil, the shoes, the champagne flutes, and donated them all to a charity for women starting over. Let something beautiful come out of something rotten. The news spread like wildfire among family. Some cousins reached out in support. Others sent thinly veiled comments about going too far and embarrassing the family. To which I replied, they did that themselves. I wasn't here to make them comfortable. A week later, Jason tried to drop by my apartment. He left a note on my door. We were drunk. It didn't mean anything. I panicked. I tore it in half without reading the rest. Vanessa sent me a long email. "I didn't mean to fall for him. I thought you were too good for him anyway. It just happened. I didn't want to hurt you. The audacity of calling it love. The cowardice of calling it an accident. As if tripping into someone's arms repeatedly is just something that happens." I never responded. Instead, I took all the screenshots, all the receipts, and I posted a single folder locked and labeled to a cloud account titled, "In Case I Forget," because one day I might miss him, or her, or us. And I needed to remember why walking away wasn't just brave, it was necessary. People think exposing betrayal is about revenge, but it's not. It's about reclaiming truth in a room full of lies. It's about ripping the mask off someone who insisted on smiling while they stabbed you. It's about refusing to be the quiet, broken woman crying in the back corner. No. I stood at the altar and said their names. I told the truth out loud, and that truth set me free. Grief comes in strange shapes when it's soaked in betrayal. It didn't hit me all at once. It came in waves, sharp and sneaky. Like when I caught myself reaching for my phone to text Jason about a funny meme, only to freeze remembering. Or when I opened my closet and saw the jacket he'd left behind still smelling like cedar and deception. But the strangest part, it wasn't him I missed the most. It was her, Vanessa, the girl who used to crawl into my bed when thunderstorms scared her, who cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, who danced barefoot with me in the kitchen while we blasted old Britney songs and lip-synced into wooden spoons. I'd lost a fiancé, but I'd buried a sister, and grief for the living is its own kind of death. One morning I stood in front of the mirror brushing my teeth, and I said it aloud just to hear it outside of my head. She chose him. That sentence never got easier, but it got clearer. It helped me accept that some people do love you, but not enough to protect you. Not enough to put your heart before their hunger, and when you finally see that there's no going back, weeks passed, then months. The wedding that never was became legend in our family. Some praised me, others whispered. Some stopped inviting me to things altogether because apparently calling out betrayal is more shameful than committing it. But I didn't care. I started therapy. I journaled every day. I changed my number. I took long walks by the river and started running again. I redecorated my apartment throughout the soft neutrals Jason loved and filled it with bold colors and vintage prints I always wanted. I made my space mine, finally, and slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt myself. Not into who I was before them, into someone better, someone sharper, calmer, still soft but no longer silent. Then one night 6 months after it all blew up, I ran into Jason at the grocery store. He looked older, thinner, tired. He froze when he saw me. I didn't. I walked right past him. No bitterness, no smile, just silence. Because some people don't deserve closure, they deserve your absence. He never tried to speak. Just stood there holding a box of cereal, watching me walk away again, this time by my choice. And that felt better than any revenge could have. It was late autumn when I saw Vanessa again. The leaves were brittle curling underfoot, and the air carried that specific chill that reminds you summer is long gone. I hadn't planned on seeing her. Honestly, I'd spent the better part of a year imagining I never would. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. It was at our cousin Olivia's baby shower. I almost didn't go. I debated for weeks, torn between protecting my peace and reclaiming the spaces they thought I'd abandoned. In the end, I chose to go for me. Not for them, not for show. Just to prove I wasn't afraid of the wreckage they left behind. I wore a bold green dress, heels that clicked louder than necessary, and when I walked in, every conversation seemed to pause mid-sentence. The air felt tight, like someone had sucked the joy out of the room and replaced it with curiosity and tension. But I smiled, hugged Olivia, complimented the decorations, accepted a mimosa and laughed when I needed to. Then I saw her. Vanessa was standing near the food table dressed in beige, her face a shadow of the girl I used to know. She looked smaller somehow, not physically but emotionally, like someone had shrunk the edges of her confidence. Her hands trembled when she reached for a cookie. I noticed that immediately. She turned. Our eyes met. She froze. And in that moment, the entire room seemed to blur around us. She started walking toward me slowly, cautiously, like I might bite. "Rachel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think you'd come." I sipped my mimosa. Clearly. She looked down, twisting the napkin in her hand. "I'm sorry." There it was. 2 words. Small. Fragile. Too late. I said nothing. Just looked at her. Not with anger. Not even pain. With distance. "I didn't know how to make it right," she continued, eyes glassy. I miss you. I miss us. You were my best friend." I stared at her for a moment, weighing the silence. Then I said softly, "You killed that version of us, not me." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. "Missing me now," I added, "isn't the same as protecting me then." Her lip quivered. "He left," she whispered. "Jason, a month after, everything. Said I wasn't what he wanted. That he made a mistake." I didn't react, not even a blink. "I guess you won," she said, as if that mattered. And that's when I leaned in just a little and replied, "I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to survive." She looked away, and I walked past her calm, grounded, healed enough to know I owed her nothing. Some battles aren't fought with fists or fire. Some are won simply by moving on. After that day at the baby shower, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Vanessa. Not at Jason. Not even at my mother, who had reached out a handful of times since the wedding disaster, sometimes with shallow apologies, sometimes with guilt-laced defenses like, "You have to understand she's still my daughter, too." But I didn't respond. Not because I hated them, because I finally understood that forgiveness doesn't always come with reconnection. Forgiveness for me meant putting the pain down, not reopening the door to those who had handed it to me. I moved forward. I got promoted at work. Started a side business designing custom event invitations, something I used to do just for fun, but now leaned into with real passion. I took weekend trips alone, learned how to enjoy silence, learned how to trust the quiet again. And I found comfort in small, gentle routines. Morning coffee by the window. Evening walks through the oak-lined streets of Savannah. Fresh flowers every Friday from the market. Life didn't rush back. It bloomed slowly, tenderly, like spring returning to a garden left for dead. Sometimes people would still bring it up. Strangers on social media. A cousin who wanted the inside scoop. Even an old college friend messaged me once. "You're kind of a legend, you know." But I didn't feel legendary. I felt real. Worn. Weathered. Stronger where I had been cracked. Then about 9 months after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. A real one. Handwritten. From Jason. I almost threw it away. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I opened it. It wasn't long. Just a few lines in shaky handwriting. "I lost everything. I deserve it. But I never stopped loving you, not even when I was too stupid to know what that meant. I hope you're okay. That's all. Jay." I stared at the letter, then folded it in half, walked it to the sink, and lit a match. It curled, smoked, and disappeared. That night I slept deeply. No dreams, just stillness, because finally nothing in my past had a hold on my future. Not him, not her, not even the part of me that once begged to be chosen. And that was my real wedding day, the day I married myself back to wholeness. The 1-year anniversary of the wedding that never happened came and went like a whisper. No cake, no vows, no overpriced dinner reservations. Just me, a glass of wine, and the sound of rain tapping against the windows of the apartment I now called home. I lit a single candle. Not for mourning, not for grief, for gratitude. Because sometimes survival looks like this quiet, steady, unphotographed. I looked around the room. The walls, once bare, now held framed art I'd collected on solo trips. The couch was no longer the one Jason and I had picked together. I'd sold that months ago. The bookshelves were lined with news stories, strong women, deep healing, and slow-burning hope. And I was different, too. Not a woman waiting to be loved. Not someone small enough to squeeze into someone else's definition of enough. I was a woman who'd stood in front of her entire world and chose truth over tradition, dignity over damage, self-respect over silence. And I didn't just survive that day, I rose. A few weeks later, I bumped into Vanessa again, this time at the grocery store. We both reached for the same jar of pasta sauce. She froze. I didn't. She looked tired, pregnant. Alone, a ringless hand, dark circles under her eyes. I stepped back, gestured for her to take it first. Her voice cracked. "Thank you," I nodded. She didn't try to speak again. She didn't need to. We'd already said everything we needed to that day in the chapel. Everything since was just echo. When she walked away, I stood there for a moment and realized I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't miss her either. She was just someone I used to know. Someone who taught me how cruel love can look when it wears a familiar face. Someone who reminded me what not to accept, who not to trust, and how to protect the parts of myself no one else can steal. And that lesson, that was worth every broken piece I had to pick up. By spring, my life had become beautifully uneventful. I woke up each day with no chaos waiting in my inbox, no secrets hiding behind a smile, no ache in my chest from loving people who didn't know how to love me back. Just morning sun spilling across my hardwood floors. Just quiet. I began hosting small dinners again. Nothing extravagant, just good food, music, people who made me feel safe. I laughed more. I trusted more. But this time, I trusted myself the most. That's the thing about betrayal. It shatters your faith in others, but eventually it sharpens your faith in you. You learn how to read silence, how to spot half-truths, how to listen to your gut the first time, not the 10th. You become the person you once needed. One night I stood on my balcony with a cup of tea and looked out over the city. It had rained earlier, and everything below glistened like the world had been polished. I thought about what my life could have been if I had gone through with that wedding. I imagined myself beside Jason living a life filled with suspicion, waking up next to a man whose promises had already decayed before our first anniversary. Smiling through holidays, pretending I didn't know. The silence in that vision was loud. And then I came back to this life, the one I chose, the one I carved out of rubble, and I smiled. Not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. A few months later, I met someone, slowly, naturally. No fireworks, just a warm, steady flame. His name was Eli, a friend of a friend, thoughtful, steady, honest in ways that felt terrifying at first. I told him everything not all at once, but in pieces. He listened, never flinched, never minimized. He once said to me, "You didn't just walk away from them, you walked back to yourself." That's rare. Maybe he's right. Maybe the real love story wasn't about Jason or Vanessa or anyone else. Maybe it was about a girl who stood at the altar and realized the person she really needed to marry was the woman she had always been becoming. It was a Tuesday unremarkable quiet when I finally opened the last box. The one I'd shoved into the back of my closet months earlier, labeled in black marker, "Wedding do not open." I wasn't sure why I kept it. Maybe out of sentiment. Maybe because I wasn't ready. But something about that day, that version of me smiling blindly full of hope, felt like it deserved a proper goodbye. So I sat cross-legged on the floor, pulled the flaps apart, and sifted through the wreckage. A dried corsage from the bridal shower, a pair of earrings I never wore, a handwritten note from Vanessa. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride. Love you forever, Ness." The words didn't hurt like they used to. They felt foreign. Like finding an old sweater that no longer fits. Soft, but not yours anymore. At the bottom of the box was the wedding program mock-up. My name, Jason's, intertwined in a scripted font. "Forever begins today." I folded it in half and slipped it into the trash. Because forever did begin that day, just not the one they imagined. That day marked the death of my silence, the rebirth of my boundaries, the beginning of my forever. Not long after, I moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, just a cozy place on a quiet street with sunlight in the mornings and a lemon tree on the balcony. I painted the walls myself, hung up art that made me feel safe. Started a new chapter with no shared memories clinging to the corners. Vanessa never reached out again. Jason moved out of state from what I heard. My mother occasionally sent cards, but her silence during my storm had already spoken volumes. Some absences are quieter than others, but just as permanent. And still I didn't hate any of them. Because carrying hate is like drinking poison hoping the other person dies. I wasn't interested in bitterness. I was interested in freedom. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here now stronger, lighter, full of peace, I wouldn't have believed them. But time has a way of softening sharp edges, and survival, when done right, eventually turns into thriving. I don't remember the exact moment I stopped checking their social media. Maybe it was the day I realized Vanessa had set her account to private. Maybe it was when Jason deleted most of his photos. Or maybe it was just the day I looked at my own reflection and didn't see a woman haunted by what they did to her. I saw a woman rebuilt. That's when I stopped looking back. The final healing came not in a grand act or dramatic moment, but in a quiet afternoon folding laundry when I realized I hadn't thought of them in days. No ache, no bitterness. Just space, room for me. And somewhere in that space, love found its way back in. Eli and I were never fireworks. We were sunrise, slow, warm, certain. He never asked for more than I could give. Never demanded that I forget. He held space for the woman I was wounded wary and never tried to fix me. He just stayed. And in a world full of people who leave the second the mask slips, that meant everything. One night we were walking by the river hand in hand when he said, "I know you've seen the worst of what love can be, but I hope you give it one more chance." And I did. Not just to him, to myself. Because surviving betrayal isn't just about cutting ties. It's about choosing to live fully again, to trust again, to risk again. And that's the scariest part of all. But here's what no one tells you about heartbreak. It doesn't destroy you. It refines you. It strips away the illusions, forces you to see who you are when everything falls apart. And if you're lucky, if you're brave, you emerge stronger, quieter, more honest. You stop begging for seats at tables where no one ever passed you the salt. You start building your own table. And that's what I did. One choice, one breath, one bold step at a time. Years from that shattered wedding day, I stand taller. Not because I forgot, but because I learned to carry the weight differently. I learned that betrayal doesn't have to define your story, that silence isn't always weakness, that sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. I'm still here, stronger, wiser, kinder to myself. I'm still learning how to trust again, but this time, the foundation is built on self-love and boundaries. Sometimes when the sky is clear and the breeze is soft, I think about that day. The day I exposed the truth. The day I shattered illusions in front of everyone I knew. And I wonder if I were watching myself, would I be proud? I think I would, because I chose truth over comfort. I chose myself over a lie. And in the quiet moments when the world feels calm, I whisper a thank you to that broken, brave girl who dared to stand up and say, "I deserve better." If you ever find yourself caught between love and betrayal, between silence and truth, remember this: you don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to carry the pain alone. Speak your truth, protect your heart, and know that sometimes the greatest love story you'll ever live is the one you write for yourself.